Hi everyone, this is Javier Cáceres. I work as a Senior Solutions Architect, and today we are going to learn how to deploy, run, scale clusters containing container clusters in the Azure Container Services. This is the agenda we will be covering today. We will start with an introduction to the Azure Container Service. Then we will learn how to deploy an Azure Container Service cluster, which is pre-configured to run Marathon and Swarm, and then we will deploy and scale a container in Azure Container Services. In another presentation, we will cover how to debug containers, just to keep this presentation short and focused. So let's get started. So this is an introduction to Azure Container Services. For those of you who are not familiar with Mesos is an open source cluster manager. What does that mean? It means that Mesos is built following this strategy of managing clusters based on masters and slaves. So we can see in the picture that the master is basically a man in the middle of the scheduler and the nodes. At the end of the day, everything is around abstracting away these resources. The resources can be machines, can be virtual machines, can be containers, or anything. Then, as we can see from the picture as well, the scheduler plays an important role in this architecture. Mesos is usually paired with Kronos and with Marathon. Now, Mesosphere is the company who creates Mesos. Mesos is an open source project, so it is not owned by Mesosphere. And then we have DCOS, which is basically Mesosphere Data Center Operating System. So we will find during the presentation DCOS many times. It's important to notice that Mesos is as such a framework with a bunch of services and programs, including things like Zookeeper, which is just for selecting the leader from a group of leaders. But for us, mere mortals, Mesos cannot be used directly. So DCOS is like usable Mesos, or Mesos for mortals. Now, let's try to get the whole picture. Let's try to see where Azure Container Services and all of this stuff fit into the big picture. So in general terms, we have application orchestration with we have frameworks like OpenShift, Cloud Foundry, so on. We have container orchestration and job scheduling is a bit overlapping, so we find stuff like Marathon, Swarm, Kubernetes, Kronos, and so on. Then we have containerization, and that's Docker. We have resource management, that's Mesos, and let's skip to machine management, and that's PaaS or platform as a service like AWS, Azure, and so on. So during this presentation, our orchestrator will be Marathon, but we could also use Docker Swarm. And then our application or our services layer, our top level layer, will be provided by DCOS. And then our resources are going to be managed by Mesos. Mesos presents all the different resources as a single unified big computer to the orchestrator / scheduler frameworks, and then we have Docker, and as we know, all of this will run within Azure. I'm including Kubernetes here just as an indication of where can be fit, but during this presentation we will cover only Marathon. This is another way to summarize, and the message here is that there are some features that overlap, and that's natural because this is a field that is evolving very quickly. So yeah, everybody wants to rule the world. Now, what is specifically Azure Container Services? Well, it's basically a cluster of virtual machines that are pre-configured to run containerized applications. So that means that you don't have to worry about, for example, provisioning the operative system. You don't have to worry about setting the basic configuration settings and that kind of things. And Azure Container Services uses Docker images. Okay, let's move on. So let's deploy an Azure Container Service cluster. So in Azure, we can use the Azure Resource Manager, or we can use the classic virtual machines. The Azure Resource Manager offers a template, and basically is a collection of pre-configured values that we can use out of the box. So the first step is basically going to the Azure Container Service Cluster, and you go to Microsoft Azure, then you click on New, then you select Container Services. We will see this working now. So let's go here. So we go to the Azure, this is the Azure portal, we go to New, and then you scroll down to Containers, and then there are different options. This is the Azure Resource Manager template. There you can also use Data Center Operative System provided by Mesos from a low-level approach, and there are also other container products. And when you click here, then you will be asked to provide some values, like for example the username used to connect to the secure shell protocol. You have to provide a SSH RSA public key, and then you have to select the location. You have to select an orchestrator. When you select DC OS, you are selecting actually Marathon, or you can select Swarm. Then you have to select the virtual machine size. In this example, I'm selecting a small one, and I'm only selecting one agent and one master. So that's basically that step. So let's see how this looks once it's created. So we go to all resources, and then I'm filtering here using the prefix that I use, and we can see that Azure, using this template, created a bunch of storage accounts. There are also a couple of load balancers, one for the agents, and there is another load balancer for the master. And there are also the virtual machines, of course. Then we have a virtual machine for the master, and and there are other resources. So this is one way to create the Azure Container Service definition, the cluster, the definition of the cluster, and the instantiation of the cluster. The second way is by using PowerShell. So if you use PowerShell, you can run this this command, new Azure Resource Manager Resource Group Deployment, and then you have to provide the template URI. There are two URIs. provided by Azure. You have one which is based in Mesos and one which is based in Swarm. If you go and inspect that Git URL, you will find that both definitions are nearly identical. The difference is that the default value is set for DCOS and then the other one is set for Swarm. Once you have this definition of the cluster, and once that the cluster is running, then the next step is to connect to the cluster. In order to do that, you create a SSH tunnel. In that case, you have to provide a SSH RSA public key. That's something that you can get using OpenSSL. By the way, OpenSSL is included in Git for Windows, so you could actually use that. And then you have to provide the name of the master load balancer. The port that we're going to use is 2200 rather than the standard 22. And then we're going to create a tunnel, so we're going to forward the incoming traffic from the port 80 to the destination port 80. Once that we create that, then we can check if everything is working by exploring the event log, right? So that's the event log. Okay, if we have this created, what is the next thing that will happen? Basically, if you go to localhost, you will be able to explore the data center operative system UI. This is the UI. The most important parts are the the dashboard. You have the total CPU allocation, because remember that Mesos make look, or Mesos will present all the different resources as a simplified big computer. Then we have another couple of views, like the services and the nodes. In this case, we have two nodes, and the data center operative system doesn't really care about if these nodes are masters or slaves. It will only present this information as we can see it. And then you can also install what I call platforms and what is called in this OS packages. You can see that Marathon is one of the packages, but we can also see another important frameworks like Kafka, Spark, and the Jenkins, the continuous integration engine. So that's cool. Then if you go to Marathon, localhost/Marathon, you will be able to access the Marathon UI, and the Marathon UI is its focus or is based on applications and deployments. So this is another layer of abstraction. It's higher. This level of abstraction is maybe higher than the one provided by TCOS. And then we have the low-level Mesos, which is about slaves, masters. Okay, so let's see everything in one picture. The summary is that there are APIs everywhere, right? So we have in the top level, in the top layer of abstraction, we have DCOS, and if you have a look at the API reference, the documentation for the API, you will notice that DCOS is all around services, also how to install services. So this is like a big concept. that involves applications. Applications are somehow like a set of services. And then this OS exposes clusters to install services, for example, to add repositories, to check usage of resources, and so on. Then we have Marathon. In Marathon, if you check the specification for the API, you will notice that it's everything about applications. Creating, starting applications, destroying applications. It's a scheduler, an orchestrator, so everything is about an application. And then we have Mesos. Mesos is everything about masters and slaves. If you check again the REST API for Mesos, you will find functions like list masters, slaves, launch, tasks, kill tasks, shut down executors, create volumes, and so on. So this is how we have the different parts fitting together. So let's move on. Let's deploy and scale a container in Azure Container Services with Marathon. So I will go through the steps in the slide, and then I will go to a live demo. So using Marathon, you can start containers. So you can do it using the UI, and then the UI will ask you for some parameters. And you can also do it, and the same for scaling. You can scale up, scale down using the UI. But you also have the option to scale, to deploy containers and scale using the command line tools. So let's go for the demonstration. By the way, if you use the command line tools, then you have to provide a template like this, a definition like this, and this is where you are specifying your base image and so on. So let's see this working. Okay, so if you go to localhost and then you click /marathon, so this is the UI. Remember that here we are using a tunnel that allows us to connect to Azure, so you know this is not actually in my local machine. Okay, so we have this option here, create application, and then I'm going to call this nginx manual. Then I'm going to use only small memory footprint, only one instance. We are going to use this image engines, and we're going to use bridged networking. We can force Marathon to pull the image from the Docker registry every time that we start an application. And there are other parameters that we can use in case you know, we want to add something. Then here we have these values. Okay, so we are going to forward all the incoming traffic from the port 80 to the port 80. As we can see here, we have on the left, we have this public API, the load balancer for the masters, and then we are accessing to the administration port in SSH, which is 22, but we are exposing it in the 2200 port. And there we are accessing the master. There is no Docker in the master, and then we have the agents. We have a couple of agents here, for example. And then we are going to define an application to deploy nginx to this agent, and then this agent, which is an instance running in a VM, has Docker installed, and we're going to access to the port 80 of that container to access nginx. And there are also other virtual machines. Okay, So okay, this is the definition we have here: environment variables, labels, health checks, volumes, and here in the optional value, in order to access containerized applications like nginx, in order to access them from the external world, we need to allow them to use the slave public resource roles. Then we click in create application, and then is showing as waiting. In the meantime, I'm going to check the definition for this one. So this is an application that I created before this recording, and then we can see that we can suspend, destroy this application. We can see the configuration that was created, that was used to create this application. We can see some debugging information. Okay, we can access this instance using this IP, and then we also have information about the volumes that were created, the working directories. At the moment we have these directories to inspect the errors and so on, and then this is how Marathon presents this information. I'm going to destroy this so that I can continue. Now let's have a look at the dashboard. So this is application containerization. Now let's have a look at the cluster management. So in the cluster management we have our nodes. So we can see that there are two instances. They both are healthy. We can see memory. You can see disk. The same for the service. At the moment I only have one service. A service is a kind of a set of applications. More information in the dashboard, and we have this as well. So let's go on and let's delete the application that it's created at the moment in Marathon. Let's delete this one. So we are going here and we're going to click on destroy. Okay, now let's open the PowerShell command line, and let's run some commands here. So as I commented during the presentation, we can see, for example, the list of slaves using this URL. So we can come here, click, and we can see that we have one slave, okay, with all the information. We can also use this command here, invoke web request, and then we pass the name of the configuration file. In my case, my configuration file is called deploying nginx. So I'm just going to replace this in here. Okay, just like that. And now I'm going to copy and paste this in the command line interface to see how it works. Again, there are no applications created at the moment, so we go here, we click, then we come here, and it's running, so it's very fast. Okay, so that's the presentation. Thank you very much for watching.